So I know it looks like I really like pink right now, but I don't. Oh, oh, maybe I do. Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and I am coming at you today with a very big book unhaul.
Better, so much better, flipping incredible.
I haven't done an unhaul in quite a while. I am definitely overdue for one. I just really wanted to cleanse out my space. Being stuck at home and being forced to stare at my bookshelves all day has made me realize that there are definitely some books that I don't really want to hold on to anymore. Most of these books I have actually read, and they just didn't capture my heart enough. And some I have just lost interest in, and definitely a series in this pile is going to be so controversial, but we will cross that road when we get to it. But I will be unhauling. With that being said, I will be donating all of these books to my local library whenever I am able to, that is. So I thought for now that I would show you this stack. By the way, before anyone panics, I did move R.A. Salvatore, which was over here. I moved him over here, so that's why you're seeing some of these books colored in. I figured I would mention that before panic ensues. So the first book I will be unhauling is The Valiant by Leslie Livingston. I enjoyed this book actually. If you're looking for a good book about fighting female gladiators, then this book is definitely for you. But it's not one I want to keep in my collection, especially when I look at it and I think, I don't really feel like moving on to the sequel. I think that's a really big sign. The fight scenes in this are really cool, but the romance kind of bogged down the story for me. The Killing Lights by Mike Cole. Don't worry, this is just the arc. I now have a beautiful finished copy on my shelf. It's actually right here. You can't see it. This is the conclusion to the Sacred Throne trilogy, which is one of my all-time favorites. If you are sitting on this trilogy and you haven't read it, what are you doing? Do yourself a favor and pick it up. They're incredibly short. It's a grimdark medieval fantasy with a queer protagonist. It's amazing, highly recommend, but I don't need this arc. I don't need two copies, okay? I will also be unhauling Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade. This one makes me so sad. I was highly anticipating it. I actually buddy read this with Jess from Stars Above Jess, who felt exactly the same way as I did. Maybe not enough where she's going to unhaul it, but I am definitely going to, unfortunately. And I don't know if I want to move on to the sequel. I might if it pops up on NetGalley, but this was just a total mess for me. There were some really good scenes in here, but the structure of it was just all over the place. You would just run into the most random scenes ever. It was a doozy, so out of my house it goes. And then I'll be unhauling Displacement by Q Hughes. I actually just read this last month. Not a whole lot to say about it. It's just a graphic novel that is memoir based and also has a time travel element to it. I enjoyed it. It centers on the Japanese incarceration camps in the 1940s, and it's definitely like a really good dose of education and enlightenment, but it's not something that I see myself rereading in the future. It's definitely a story that I will always remember, but it's not something that I need a physical copy of. And then I have the Nightmares trilogy by Jason Segel and Kristen Miller. This is a series I actually really enjoyed. I actually kept up with the series as they were coming out. The first one being Nightmares, and then the second one being the Sleepwalker Tonic, and the third one being The Lost Lullaby. It's a middle grade series and they are really fun, but I've just had these books in my collection for so long, and I just feel like I need to pass the torch along. I think a kid will enjoy these so much more than if I were to ever reread them, which I don't really see in the foreseeable future, but they were nice to have in my collection for a while, but I think I need to pass them on. If you're looking for a spooky middle grade, I highly recommend these. Whew, okay, so now we have come to the very controversial series that is going to make a lot of you sad. Maybe this is where all my dislikes come from. I don't know, but I will be unhauling The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King by Holly Black. So I enjoyed The Cruel Prince when I read it when it came out. I actually read the arc of it before it was released, which I was very grateful for. But I have not had any interest at all to go into The Wicked King. And my main reason is because, for one, I totally forget everything that happens in this book except for the very end. And also, I don't like Carden. I just found his personality to be hot garbage, and like, I don't really want to keep reading about him. And I would have to reread this book to move on to this one. and I don't really want to do that. This series you might be able to persuade me to keep and read, but I'm pretty sure these are going out the door. Now that I've said that though, everyone's gonna tell me to keep them and read them. So this next book might confuse you a little bit, but it's Semiosis by Sue Burke. In my last reading wrap-up, I reviewed this and I flipped it on my shelf, but after a couple days, I kept looking at it and I was like, I don't really want to keep you. I'm never gonna reread it. It's a book that didn't wow me, unfortunately, but I do still think it's worth the read. It's a first contact with aliens sci-fi, and it was really interesting. Like, the planets become sentient, and that part of the book was really interesting to read about. But I thought for sure this was going to be like more horror or thriller, and it's not at all. It's kind of like a slice of life on a foreign planet. You're just learning about these people trying to survive, and I just don't really see myself even moving on to the sequel, and I think that is a big sign that I don't really need this in my collection. So I'm sorry I flipped this. I just undid the process of coloring in my shelves, but you know what? That's okay. Okay, so I think that's all of the books I have read. Now I'm going to move on to all the books that I DNF'd. The first one being Rogue Princess by B.R. Myers. I DNF'd this around page 40. It's a YA sci-fi gender-bent Cinderella retelling, and a lot of people compared this to Cinder by Marissa Meyer, but I actually loved Cinder when I read it. I didn't love this. I found this one to be super bland in my opinion, and it's such a shame because this cover is one of the most prettiest covers I have ever seen, but it is what it is. And then I have Annex by Rich Larson. I DNF'd this one close to 100 pages actually, so it kept my attention for a lot longer than a typical DNF for me. I normally DNF books around like page 50 if I'm really not into it. It's a sci-fi about these aliens who come down to Earth and they immediately kill all of the adults, so the children have to try and survive and try not to be captured by these aliens. It's such a cool concept, but unfortunately I had to set this one down. It just stopped being interesting, and I also found the characters to be really bland as well. And then I have A Witch in Time. Wow, that's upside down. A Witch in Time by Constance Sayers. I've pretty much said my piece when it comes to this book. I DNF'd it after the very uncomfortable sex scene between a 15-year-old girl and a 40-year-old man, which made me not care at all for like the two main characters. That's it for this. Don't need it. And the final book that I DNF'd in this pile, I think, is Ship of Smoke and Steel by Django Wexler. This is another case where I just couldn't get behind the main character. If I can't enjoy the main character, more than likely, I just can't enjoy the whole story at all. I do want to mention that I am reading this author's newest book that releases in June, which is called Ashes of the Sun, and I am really enjoying that one. It's like on a totally different level than this. I mean, this is YA and that one is adult. I don't know if that has any difference. Probably not. But yeah, like the main character in this can jump off the ship literally. Alrighty, so now we are moving on to the books that I have just lost interest in. The first one is Hinderbell by J.D. Netto. This came in a Christmas Beacon book box, and I just don't think I'll ever pick it up. It is a Christmas story, so obviously, I would probably read it around Christmas time. I just don't really see that happening. And then I have an arc of The Crow Rider by Kaylin Josephson. Hope I said that right. I got this unsolicited, which means I didn't request it. It just showed up at my house from the publisher, which I'm grateful for. But I have never read the first book. This is the sequel to The Storm Crow? Is that what it's called? Okay, so the conclusion to the epic Stormcrow duology. And I actually have the first book on my Kindle. I am very interested in reading it, but I don't have a physical copy, and I don't think I need an arc of the sequel, so someone else can enjoy this. And then I have War Girls by Toni Umbuchi. Even though this cover is a freaking stunner, and it's a reflection of the Nigerian Civil War, which sounds so unique, it's a YA dystopian, and that's just a genre that I don't care to read whatsoever. I find that genre really hard to pick up nowadays. It just doesn't interest me anymore. So I will be passing this one along. And then I have a couple graphic novels, and that is Giant Days Volume 1 and Giant Days Volume 2. I'm trying to be really picky when it comes to my graphic novel collection because, for one, I always forget about them. I will read the first volume and really enjoy it and then totally forget to read the sequel. It's like that for Giant Days, unfortunately. I read the first one and I liked it, but it's not something that I want to hold on to or even continue. It's following these three girls who are friends at university. It's kind of like a contemporary graphic novel. It's really funny. It's very lighthearted. But yeah, nothing terribly special where I feel like I need a physical copy. And the final book in this book haul is The Black Witch by Lori Forrest. I have owned this book since 2017 and I have not once ever thought about picking it up. This was actually sent to me by the author. She contacted me and asked me if I wanted a copy. There's even a little sticky note right there. But I was very unsure about it. It's not a book that really intrigued me. I mean, it sounds cool, but I just don't see myself picking it up in like the next year. I mean, it's been sitting at the bottom of my YA shelf underneath a bunch of other books, and I think that's a sign that I'm just not attracted to it. Whew, okay, so that is the end of my very large book unhaul. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I have given you inspiration to clean out your bookshelves. I mean, it is spring, so you know, spring cleaning. Go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, because that helps me out so much. Go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram at HollingArtsBooks and on Twitter at HollingNees. And until we meet again, happy reading.